morning, good afternoon, good evening. One of the problems with a dictatorship is that they are not accountable, the leaders are not accountable to the people. And one of the tragedies is that they listen to no one else except themselves. They are in an echo chamber. They still believe that they have the answers when they are, in fact, the problem. And so all they ever do is drag the nation deeper and deeper into the abyss. I'd like us to listen to a recent speech by acting President VP Chiwenga.
What legacy are we creating? One of sacrifice, patriotic service, and national purpose, or one of plunder? Ladies and gentlemen, the liberation struggle was not waged so that a few could prosper while many remain in abject poverty. It was fought so that every Zimbabwean could walk in dignity and economically empowered. Our duty is not to merely honor their memory. It is to implement their vision through ethical leadership, clean governance, unity of purpose, and economic transformation. Therefore, his enduring aspiration was to see that same stability, prosperity, and national cohesion firmly established in his own country, not as an abstract ideal, but as a lived reality for every citizen. We need to take note of significant progress under National Development Strategy 1 and NDS 1 as we transition into National Development Strategy 2. Defeat corruption and uphold a whole of government approach, realizing our vision of becoming an upper middle income society by 2030 hinges on our collective commitment to ethical behavior and the rejection of selfish and enrichment practices.
I think what most people find so desperately annoying is the way leaders like Chiwenga have no clue what is happening. It has been 45 years, now we're getting into the 46th year after independence. The country was an upper middle income nation in 1980 when we acquired our independence. It has seen the economy collapse in 45 years. And here he is. He still firmly believes that he is the solution. He can still revive the country's economy. It's one of the repeating themes when you've got a dictatorship. They never realize that they are the problem. They always think of somebody else causing the problem. And this is why we are stuck in this situation. Ben, welcome to the program.
Good day to you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Not long ago, we had one dictator say, he needs one more term because he's got small little projects to finish off. And in the back of your mind, you're saying, my God, you've been here for decades. What small little projects could you honestly have to finish off that you couldn't have done in all these years? And then here we have the vice president. He's already saying they're going into the second part of this whole 2030, movement or agenda of making Zimbabwe, an upper middle income economy. And then you're saying to yourself, but hold on a minute. We still haven't seen the first part and the progress thereof. What are we talking about? We are miles apart. You are seeing what we are not seeing. We still have the same conditions that we have had in previous years, where our hospitals lack medicines, our children are landing under trees, our rural folk still live in mud huts. The roads are not only worse than what they were, they're extremely dangerous. And the list goes on and on and on. So where is this development that you are talking about of the first phase before we even start talking about going into the second phase? Yeah. It shows there is a very, very big difference between those that are living in reality, which are the poor, us ordinary Zimbabweans, and those on the high table who are living in a cocoon and a delusional mind where they think a tribalism is progress. Opening a public toilet is progress. Drilling boreholes is progress. Giving, for EDs, cars and so forth, and monies is progress. That is not progress. So we are so far apart. It's hard for us, the ordinary people, the ordinary citizens that are living the day-to-day struggles, and these that are pampered and comforted to an extent where they don't see the pains of finding a square meal. That is the problem with dictators for me. They have it in their mind that they are doing so much great things because of the small little things that they are doing, things that they're supposed to have been doing anyway.
I think it's important that we should clarify where ZANU-PF has gone wrong. The most important problem we have in Zimbabwe, why we are a failed state, is because we've been stuck with a corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical regime that ordinarily people would have removed from office if they had a meaningful say in the governance of the country. The Zimbabweans have never had a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That is where the problem is. ZANU-PF has always believed that they have the divine right to rule the country. And they would never brook any possibility that they could lose that power. So they never trusted the ordinary people to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. Here is a stark reminder of who our friend here, Chiwenga, really is. In 2008, ZANU-PF was forced to implement some democratic reforms to ensure the elections were free, fair, and credible. In 2008, the people of Zimbabwe seized on the opportunity to remove the regime from office. The March 2008 election was the nearest the country has ever got to holding free, fair, and credible elections. But when ZANU-PF, notably Chiwenga and Mnangagwa, realized that the people had rejected ZANU-PF, they stepped in and took over the electoral process. They recounted 5 million votes, and it took them 6 weeks to do so. And in that period, they whittled down the opposition's parliamentary lead to a few handful seats. But most notably, they whittled down Tsvangirai's presidential votes from the 73%, according to Mugabe's own admission, to 47%, enough to force the runoff. Here is an account of what happened in that year.
I also know that Mugabe conceded defeat in 2008. He phoned Mbeki and Obasanjo to concede defeat. I hope that Thabo Mbeki and Obasanjo will one day make that public. But one of them, I won't say which one, told me that Mugabe phoned them that Saturday night and said, look, I lost the election and I concede defeat. And I know that Mugabe stuck to his guns. I was prepared to go. His wife was since bags packed to go somewhere on the following day when Mnangagwa and Chiwenga approached him and said, you stay where you are. And then they contrived the runoff, sadly with the help of South Africa. And runoff took place, very violent. 360 people were killed. The South African, I came here as part of a delegation to Cape Town to see members of the ANC. I don't want to mention names, they're my friends. I saw them, and through them, a cabinet committee subcommittee of South African cabinet was set up on the Zimbabwe issue. It was on the basis of that cabinet committee that South Africa did not recognize the runoff. And indeed, it was the basis of that committee that Thabo sent the generals to South Africa, to Zimbabwe. I met them, and I was one of the few to have read the report, because I was flying to Joburg in the company of General Romano, who was a friend. He passed away, no? So, yeah. And I also took people who had lost their hands in the violence to the South African embassy in Harare. And Romano broke down in tears. How can a liberation movement treat these people like that? He was a broken man. So there's no doubt at all
that is the reality of Zimbabwean politics. We have individuals like Chiwenga who are corrupt, incompetent, and they were prepared to kill people to stay in power. And even now, after 45 years and counting of blundering from pillar to post, they have the audacity to still believe they are the ones with the solution to Zimbabwe's problems. I think people like him, Chiwenga, should be told in no uncertain terms that following the electoral coup of 2008, he, Mnangagwa, and all those who were involved should have been sent to prison for their treason. It is absurd that individuals like that should find themselves in positions of power and authority. That is the reality. And as for this 2030 vision, Mr. Chiwenga, you should just leave office and leave the Zimbabweans to sort out this mess. You created the mess. You are the problem. You have always been the problem this last 45 years. And your insistence that you are the solution is compounding the problem. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
I would say it's sad when you come across Zimbabwean citizens out there who actually believe that the likes of Vice President Chiwenga is the solution to our problem. Because, I mean, let's be honest, there are people that want him in power, that see him as somebody that, will whip people into a straight line and help stop corruption. And they've gone to paint him a saint, basically. And they have wiped his slate clean. That cannot happen. A leopard just doesn't change his spots. These guys have been on the political front for a very long time, and they have been brutal to us. It would be incredibly naive to think that all of a sudden, they have been touched by the spirit and that have turned a new leaf. It's incredibly naive that we would think like this. And what worries me is the number of people that were supporting what Comrade Geza was saying about him as the next best thing. And a lot of Zimbabweans, intellectuals for that matter, believed it, followed him, tried to join into it. If it wasn't for the common sense of very few people that said, no, we know this guy, we know his record, there it is. we would have been easily in trouble again. We would have simply done what we did with Mugabe. Removed Mugabe, put Mnangagwa, a worse off a character. And here we were at the brink of doing the same thing. So we got a problem as Zimbabweans. And I've always said this, we shouldn't, be always pointing a finger to say, ZANU-PF did this, ZANU-PF. Sometimes we have invited trouble into our backyard by simply not thinking through, by simply ignoring facts. And that is the biggest problem with Zimbabweans. They twist, they rewrite facts. Historical facts are there for a reason. That is how we can also get the help to judge the character. If we want change, you don't go and pick the riffraff. You have to do your background check, and background check is history. And those are facts. So sometimes when you look at it and you say, are we ready for change? The answer is no. And what legacy do we want to leave for our children? That's a question that we should be asking. What is it that we want our children to remember us by? Are we going to leave our children with ZANU-PF? Because that will be our legacy as well. You brought in ZANU-PF, you left ZANU-PF, you kept on electing ZANU-PF, and you knew what they were up to. So we are equally to blame at the end of the day. We have to change at some point. We may not be able to change everybody, but change starts with you, each and every one of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. I would like to reiterate the problem in Zimbabwe. We have failed to embrace the fundamental truth that good governance depends on allowing all the citizens to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. To put it in another way, we are a failed state because for the last 45 years, we have been stuck with a corrupt, incompetent, and murderous regime that we have failed to remove from office because they rigged elections. The right to free, fair, and credible elections is more than a right. It's the very essence of good governance. And God knows, after 45 years of corrupt and tyrannical government, the people of Zimbabwe can finally do with good governance. Chiwenga is vice president. Mnangagwa is the president. ZANU-PF is the ruling party. But let's be very clear. They were not elected by the people of Zimbabwe. They rigged the 2023 elections. SADC, the AU election observers, and all election observers of any note condemned those elections as flawed. I think the people of Zimbabwe can honestly say to ZANU-PF, to Mnangagwa and his regime, go. After 45 years of tyrannical rule, for God's sake, go and let's be done with you. Chiwenga is not offering anything. And those who continue to pretend that, yes, we can replace Mnangagwa with Chiwenga are just idiots. There's nothing else to be said about it, but that is the truth. After 45 years of rigged elections, we can't keep repeating the same mistake over and over again. 2028, the people of Zimbabwe should commit themselves to saying, while we cannot stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections, we can stop them having legitimacy. And that we can do by making sure that people do not participate in the flawed elections in their millions, as they've done in the past. We are the masters of our own destiny. It's just that we've not stopped to think what needs to be done, much less go ahead and do it. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.